What if a single weapon system could strike a target the size of a city block from nearly 120 kilometers away, silently, precisely, and without any warning? What if that system had already been quietly deployed to one of the most volatile conflict zones on Earth, and most of the world had absolutely no idea it even existed? In the next few minutes, you are going to discover why military analysts in Washington, London, and Brussels are now quietly alarmed by a weapon that Russian engineers have spent years developing in secret. A weapon that could fundamentally change the balance of power in modern artillery warfare. Stay with us, because what you are about to hear is not speculation. It is based on verified defense intelligence and battlefield data that the mainstream media has barely touched. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going into the heart of one of the most significant developments in Russian military technology in the past decade. We are talking about the Sarma 300mm long-range artillery system, a weapon that has been quietly rising through the ranks of Russian defense development, drawing the attention of NATO planners and sparking urgent intelligence briefings across allied nations. If you have been following the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe, if you care about how modern warfare is evolving, or if you simply want to understand what the next chapter of large-scale military confrontation could look like, then this video is essential viewing. We are going to break down everything, the engineering behind the SRMA, its battlefield role, how it compares to Western counterparts, and what its emergence means for geopolitical stability right now. This is not just a story about a gun. This is a story about power, deterrence, and the future of war itself. Let us start at the beginning, and the beginning, in this case, is the problem that Russia needed to solve. For years, Russian military commanders faced a persistent and deeply frustrating limitation on the battlefield. Their existing artillery systems, while formidable in many respects, were simply outranged by evolving Western systems being supplied to adversaries. The range gap was not just a tactical inconvenience, it was a strategic liability. When your enemy can strike you from a distance you cannot reach in return, you are perpetually reactive, perpetually vulnerable. Russian military doctrine, which has always placed enormous emphasis on firepower and deep strike capability, could not tolerate this gap for long. And so, behind the closed doors of Russia's most classified defense laboratories and manufacturing facilities, a new program was born. A program designed to produce a system that would not just close the range gap, but leap far beyond it. That program produced the Sarma 300mm artillery system, and what it represents is a dramatic evolution in Russian long-range fires capability. Now, before we go any further, we need to address the elephant in the room, because some of you may be asking, why haven't I heard more about this? The answer is both simple and sobering. Russia's defense establishment is extraordinarily skilled at information compartmentalization. They have learned from decades of intelligence competition with the West exactly how to develop, test, and begin fielding a weapon system while keeping the world largely in the dark. The Sarma program benefited from this culture of secrecy at every stage of its development. By the time Western analysts began piecing together the full picture from satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and battlefield observation, the system was already in an advanced stage of operational readiness. That is how dangerous this situation is, and that is why what we are telling you today matters. The Sarma's designation, 300mm, immediately tells any serious defense analyst something critical about the weapon's intended role and capability. 300mm is not a caliber associated with light or medium artillery support. It is a caliber associated with mass destruction, deep fires, and strategic suppression. To put it in context, the Russian BM-30 Smerch multiple rocket launcher, itself a fearsome and well-documented system, operates in this same caliber class. But the SARMA is not a simple evolution of the Smerch. It is a fundamentally different approach, incorporating design philosophies and technological advances that put it in a category largely its own within the Russian order of battle. Here is what the intelligence community has been paying close attention to: the SARMA's reported maximum range. While exact figures remain classified and subject to ongoing assessment, credible defense intelligence sources have placed its effective range at figures that, if accurate, would make it one of the longest, reaching conventional artillery systems currently deployed by any military on Earth. We are talking about ranges that compress the traditional distinction between artillery and tactical ballistic missiles, ranges that force NATO planners to completely rethink the depth of their defensive positions and the location of their logistics hubs, command centers, and support facilities. When artillery can reach as far as some tactical missiles, the entire architecture of battlefield planning must evolve. And right now, that evolution is happening in real time, under extreme pressure, and with lives in the balance. But raw range numbers, dramatic as they are, only tell part of the story. What makes the Sarma system genuinely alarming to Western defense planners is the combination of range, precision, and payload versatility. Modern long-range fires are only as effective as their guidance systems. And here again, the Sarma reportedly incorporates advances that represent a significant step forward for Russian artillery technology. Precision-guided munitions capable of terminal guidance corrections, compensating for atmospheric variables, target movement, and electronic countermeasures give the Sarma a lethality per round that far exceeds that of older, unguided heavy artillery. This is not the blunt, instrument area suppression of Soviet-era doctrine. This is targeted, economical, high lethality fires designed for the modern, sensor-rich battlefield. Think about what that means in practice. A commander deploying SARMA-equipped units does not need to saturate an area with hundreds of rounds to destroy a specific target. A small number of precisely guided rounds can achieve effects that would previously have required massive expenditure of ammunition and significant logistical strain. In a prolonged conflict, exactly the kind of conflict that has been unfolding in Eastern Europe, ammunition sustainability is one of the most critical operational factors. A system that can achieve decisive effects with fewer rounds is not just more lethal, it is more strategically sustainable. It allows operations to continue at tempo even when supply lines are stressed. And in modern warfare, maintaining tempo while your adversary's tempo degrades is often the difference between victory and defeat. Now let us talk about the platforms. The Sarma system is not confined to a single vehicle or launch configuration, and this versatility is itself a major tactical advantage. Russian defense engineers have clearly prioritized mobility, survivability, and cross-terrain operability in the Sarma's design. The system can be configured for deployment across multiple platform types, allowing commanders to integrate it into a variety of tactical and operational frameworks. This means that tracking and targeting Sarma batteries becomes significantly more difficult for opposing forces. A system that can rapidly displace after firing, the classic shoot and scoot tactic that modern artillery warfare demands, is exponentially harder to locate and counter battery. And when that system also has the range to engage from positions far beyond the reach of most opposing counter battery radars, the survivability equation shifts dramatically in its favor. This is precisely what has driven such urgency in NATO counter-artillery planning circles. The combination of extreme range, high precision, platform versatility, and shoot and scoot capability creates what analysts describe as a highly survivable, high-value fires platform, one that can influence the battlefield at operational depth while remaining largely immune to immediate retaliation. For commanders on the opposing side, this creates a profoundly uncomfortable tactical reality. You are being struck from distances you struggle to observe. You cannot easily locate the system that is firing at you. And when you do get targeting data, the platform has already moved. This is not hypothetical. This is the reality that Ukrainian commanders and NATO advisors have been wrestling with as Russian long-range fires doctrine has evolved throughout the conflict. Let us pause here for a moment and put a Sarma in its broader strategic context, because understanding a single weapon system in isolation is never sufficient. The Sarma does not exist in a vacuum. It is part of a deliberate, long-term Russian effort to rebuild and modernize its land forces fires capability following the hard lessons learned in earlier conflicts. Russia's military leadership, watching the evolution of Western precision fires with the kind of focused attention that only adversaries develop, recognized years ago that the era of mass artillery, thousands of barrels firing unguided rounds in coordinated storms of steel, was giving way to a new era of precision deep fires. The question for Russian defense planners was not whether to adapt, but how fast and how comprehensively they could do so given the constraints of sanctions, economic pressure, and the ongoing demands of active conflict. The Sarma represents their answer to that question, and it is an answer that deserves serious respect, regardless of which side of the geopolitical divide you stand on. Now, inevitably, comparisons will be drawn between the Sarma and its Western counterparts. The United States has invested heavily in its own long-range precision fires programs. The Extended Range Cannon Artillery, or ERCA program, has sought to push conventional artillery range envelopes to unprecedented levels. The M270 multiple launch rocket system and its variants, the HIMARS platform that has featured so prominently in recent conflict coverage, these represent the Western approach to long-range fires. And NATO members are increasingly integrating new precision munitions, extended range rockets, and advanced guidance packages into their artillery formations. But here is the uncomfortable truth that defense analysts on both sides of the Atlantic acknowledge, even if they do not always say it loudly in public. The development race in long-range fires is intensely competitive, outcomes are uncertain, and advantages are never permanent. The Sarma's emergence is a reminder that Russia, despite the economic and military pressures it faces, retains a deep institutional capability in defense engineering and weapons development. The design bureaus, the manufacturing infrastructure, the scientific and engineering talent, these did not disappear with the Soviet Union, and they have not been neutralized by Western sanctions. They have adapted, they have refocused, and in the Sarma, they have produced a system that demands to be taken seriously. So where does this leave us? Where does the emergence of the Sarma 300mm system fit into the larger picture of modern warfare and global security? The most immediate implication is tactical and operational. The Sarma is influencing how battles are being fought right now in the active conflict zone, where Russian and Ukrainian forces continue to engage across an enormous front. Russian artillery has been a defining feature of this conflict from its earliest days, and the evolution of that artillery toward greater range, greater precision, and greater survivability represents a continuous adaptation that Ukrainian defenders and their NATO partners must constantly work to counter. Every development in Russian fires capability triggers a corresponding effort in counter battery radar deployment, artillery hardening, logistics dispersal, and the acceleration of Western fires support to Ukraine. The Sarma is one more turn of this relentless technological spiral. But the implications extend far beyond the immediate conflict. In the Indo-Pacific, in the Baltic region, in the Korean Peninsula, wherever potential great power confrontations are being gamed and planned for, the emergence of a new Russian long-range fires system recalibrates threat assessments and force planning. NATO commanders considering the defense of the Baltic states must now factor in a system that can strike from greater depth than previously anticipated. Planners designing the disposition of forward, deployed forces, ammunition depots, and command infrastructure must push those elements further back, further underground, and further dispersed. Every kilometer of additional range that a new artillery system brings to the battlefield is a kilometer that defensive planners must add to their safety calculations. And there is an economic dimension to this that rarely receives the attention it deserves. Modern precision artillery systems are extraordinarily expensive to counter at scale. When an attacker can deploy a relatively small number of high-precision, long-range rounds to achieve effects previously requiring massive ammunition expenditure, the cost asymmetry shifts in their favor. Defenders must invest in counter battery systems, in active protection, in logistics hardening, in personnel and infrastructure dispersal, all of which are costly, complex, and resource-intensive. The side that forces its adversary to spend more on defense than it spends on offense holds a durable strategic advantage. The Sarma, if it performs as reported, contributes to exactly this kind of cost imposition on Russia's adversaries. Now here is something that the mainstream coverage of this system has almost entirely missed, and it speaks to a dimension of the Sarma's strategic significance that goes beyond the purely military. The development and fielding of the Sarma sends a signal. It sends a signal to Russia's adversaries, to its partners, and to the global defense market. To adversaries, it says, our fire's capability has not been degraded to the point of irrelevance by years of conflict and economic pressure. We continue to develop, we continue to deploy, and the threat we pose is not static. To partners, nations that purchase Russian defense systems, it says, Russia remains a credible defense exporter with cutting-edge capability to offer. And to the global defense market, it represents a data point in the ongoing competition between Russian, Western, and Chinese defense industries for influence, revenue, and strategic partnerships. In a world where arms exports are one of Russia's most important tools of geopolitical influence, a demonstrably capable new long-range fire system is not just a military asset, it is a diplomatic and economic one. The nations that purchase it gain capability, Russia gains revenue, relationships, and leverage. And the global security environment grows more complex, more dangerous, and more difficult to manage. We are living through a period of profound disruption in military technology and global security. The rules that governed great power competition for decades are being rewritten in real time, and weapons systems like the Sarma 300mm are among the tools with which that rewriting is being done. Understanding these systems, their capabilities, their limitations, their strategic implications, is not an exercise in academic interest. It is a prerequisite for understanding the world we actually live in. The Sarma is real, its capabilities are significant, its implications are far-reaching, and the decisions that governments, militaries, and defense planners make in response to its emergence will shape outcomes that affect millions of people across Europe and beyond. This is not a story with a simple ending, and it is not a story that is over. It is unfolding right now in real time on a battlefield that sits just a few hours flight from the capitals of Western Europe. So what can you do? Stay informed. Question the narratives. Look beyond the headlines to the systems, the strategies, and the stakes. Because in the age of precision warfare and great power competition, what you do not know absolutely can hurt you, and it can hurt the people and the world you care about. Do not let that happen. Stay alert, stay engaged, and do not go anywhere, because in our next video, we are going deeper into the Russian long-range fires program, examining the full ecosystem of systems, tactics, and doctrine that surround the Sarma and what it tells us about the future of warfare. You will not want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button right now, drop a comment, telling us what you want us to cover next, and share this video with anyone who needs to understand what is really happening on the modern battlefield. This is Games of Schemes, and we will see you in the next one.